What's happening? It's Instructor J with Guardian Training Consulting, and I wanted to take this opportunity to do a open forum. If people have questions, if people have some burning questions that they want to talk about, the whole point of this is to be an open forum. I will try to guide it and talk about home defense guns because I have had an inordinate amount of questions pertaining to, hey, Instructor J, I'm thinking about buying my first gun and I want to use it for home defense and I don't really know what to buy, or I've just bought this gun and I want to learn more about it and the capabilities for home defense. So we're going to really be we're not going to be talking about tactics. We're going to kind of do a tech talk. And then also if you have questions, comments, concerns, I definitely want to answer them. So a little background on me, just so everybody knows. Some people know me, some people don't. 15 years of military and law enforcement experience. Current law enforcement officer right now. Been a firearms instructor now for almost 9 years of that 15 years. And then teaching both civilians and law enforcement. And then a couple military here and there. So again, what I want to bring forth is if you have questions about, you're thinking about buying a gun, you're thinking about possibly protecting your home, again, due to these uncertain times, I've gotten a lot of questions about this. So I want to keep this an open forum. If you have questions, please post them below and I'll answer them. So I'm going to try to, I have my phone right here. I'm going to try to answer questions if I don't see them here, but just post them. So the three big home defense questions I get with guns is typically your pistols. Okay, so your pistols, your carbines or your rifles, typically like an AR-15 style rifle, and then the 12 gauge shotgun, whether it's a pump action or a semi-automatic. These are a lot of questions I get. Now, 90% or more of our courses that people, for private instruction that people ask us, typically involves a pistol. That's kind of the go-to thing. That's kind of the beginning stages for most people. And we'll talk about pros and cons. So we're going to talk about, first we're going to talk about guns. So specifically the pros and cons of each of your pistol, your rifle, and your shotgun. And then we're going to talk about, ammunition and stuff like that as I drop around, but it's okay. So we're going to talk about the weapon system themselves as well as the ammunition. So let me see if I can get up on one of the ones that I'm on. Let me see here. Let's do this. All right. Okay, so the big thing that I get, the question I get is what is the best home defense gun? Well, that's kind of a double-edged sword. So it's really what works for you and what your lifestyle is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the pros and cons of each and every one of them. So the number one home defense gun that I see is typically your pistol. So a handheld weapon system that can either be operated with two hands, so two hands, or say I'm grabbing a door and I can work it with one hand. So the big thing that I get is so selling guns. Here's the thing. I sold guns for numerous amounts of years. While I was a police officer, I worked at a gun shop. I get a lot of gun store self-defense experts that work at gun stores, and it's just so pervasive in the industry. Understand the person that typically is selling the gun doesn't understand firearms, and they're not instructors. They're typically younger, or they just don't possess the experience and training to understand what really they're selling. What they're mostly concerned about is commission. It's selling you the most expensive gun because then they get the commission. It's no disrespect to them, but that's what I did for numerous amounts of years. while I was a police officer, just as a fun job. Young married guy working as a cop in a small town in North Dakota. I was a police officer in North Dakota. When it's 70 below zero outside, you don't really have much to do besides stay at the gun store. And then I stayed at the gun store so long, they offered me a job, and they liked having a cop work there because it typically kept the problem children from staying there. So, as an instructor teaching citizens, and specifically ladies, and I can say this because, ladies, you are the most underrepresented people in our industry, and honestly the least respected. Which honestly, as even me being a knuckle dragging Neanderthal male, type A male, it absolutely pisses me off because you're so undervalued, and you're the largest demographic of growing demographic of our industry, and us knuckle draggers need to take notice. Now, having a wife like Instructor Karen, who is 11 years Chicago Police Department and then 10 years with the Federal Air Marshal Service, you tend to take notice of the skill set that women can and will have. So going back to that, a lot of gun salesmen will try to sell you a home defense gun that's this subcompact 6-shot, 5-shot gun, either a revolver, it's a cute gun, it's pink or whatever the case may be. And I can't stress enough that is not a good home defense gun. A good home defense gun, it doesn't have to be this massive behemoth gun. But I'm going to tell you, but a lot of people have this mindset that if I have 5 or 6 rounds, it's all I need. That's all I need. Because if I can't solve it in 5 to 6 rounds, then I shouldn't be in the fight no matter what. Well, us as people, responsible citizens that are carrying firearms in and around our communities, as well as in our home, having guns that protect us in our home, we don't get to pick the fight that we get thrust upon. Now, sometimes the best fight from a tactics standpoint, and I'll define tactics. Tactics is defined as the decisions that we make that determine wins or losses. That is it. It doesn't have to do with camouflage. It doesn't have to do with plate carriers, night vision, scary black rifles, any of that. It's really the decisions that we make that determine wins or losses. And the simple fact is, for example, if Instructor Karen walked through the door of my office right here, walked through the door with a new dress, and she says, "Does this dress make me look fat?" There's a right answer to that question. And that determines whether I sleep in my own bed and not be in the doghouse with my 60-pound pit bull. But again, I don't know how many times they're trying to sell a small gun. And then when I bring out the likes of a Glock 17, a full size, like a polymer striker fired gun, or the likes of a 2011, which I don't recommend, but again, a full size gun with a weapon mounted light. They're like, wait, that's what military and law enforcement carry. Well, I get that, but understand, for example, like this 2011, this is one of my favorite home defense guns because it is truly a great gun to have. Yes, it is heavy. This gun is a behemoth of a heavy gun in the realm of pistols, like the light striker fired polymer guns. Is it? I can't lift it up. No, I can lift it up and I can employ it. But this gun carries 20 rounds of 9mm. 20 rounds of 9mm in my gun. And then if I have a spare magazine, I have 40 rounds at my disposal. No, Charlie, that pit is only 60 pounds. Sorry. He may look 120 pounds, but he's only 60. There was a guy that was commenting about my pit bull. So, again, would I rather have a gun that has the maximum amount of ammunition that I possibly can get and I can still employ it? Absolutely. Again, remember, it's amazing when I get people that shoot a lighter gun. They're like, dang, the recoil and the kick is just so much. And then I hand them the same caliber gun, and it's just a little bit heavier, a little bit longer, and I have a little more mag capacity, which makes it a little heftier. They start shooting it, and the recoil and kick actually diminishes. And I'm not going to get into a physics lessons about how that works. Again, something at rest tends to stay at rest. Some things at motion tend to stay in motion. That's it. That's a Newton's law. So understand when I hand this gun, they're like, dang, this gun is not big and scary. you'd be surprised how easy it is to shoot. Like this is honestly my fastest firing pistol that I own. It's a freaking laser gun. It's a great gun to shoot. It's an easy gun to shoot, and when I hand it to people, the intimidation value is very high for them to handle it. But then they start shooting it, and they're like, "Wow, I can't believe how easy it is to shoot this." Absolutely. But again, that's what I've done for this many years. That's what we're trying to do. So the pros of a pistol from a home defense standpoint is I can work it one-handed. I've had a lot of arguments about weapon-mounted lights. Wherever I point the gun, I have to use it. But again, could I be grabbing my child? Could I be taking my child from the one bedroom to the next? And next thing you know, bad guy decides to come around the corner, and I have my gun. Absolutely, this could be a viable tool. Could I open doors one-handed and have my gun here? Absolutely. Now, the cons of this is understand it is the most common weapon system that I train, but for my citizens and my clients, but it's the hardest and the steepest learning curve of the three weapon systems when it comes to being accurate with it. You'd be surprised at how difficult for the average citizen to shoot a man-sized target at 25 yards with this. Now, the question I always get is, well, Instructor J, when would I ever have to shoot somebody at 25 yards? Okay, are the odds that you may have to shoot somebody at 25 yards small? Yes. But for example, I could take this gun or this gun or any pistol for that matter and shoot a man-sized target at 100 yards. And I get this honestly, it's an elementary argument about when would I ever have to shoot somebody at 100 yards with a handgun? Until you have to. And the simple fact is, why wouldn't we want to train to that capability and reach that capability and be confident in shooting a man-sized steel? And that's what we do. We take students out and we put a steel up and we shoot at 100 yards with handguns. They're like, why would I ever have to do this? I'm like, you're right. The possibility of it happening is slim to none. But if you can accurately engage something at 100 yards with a handgun, how easy would it be to cut that by 1/4 and put it at 25 yards? And that's the theory behind it. That's the aspect behind it. That's how professional athletes, Olympians train. That's how they train. So why can't we mold what we do in the firearms world to what the professional athletes do? Because at the end of the day, what's at stake for a professional athlete? A trophy or a medal. What's at stake for us? Life or death? Or going to prison or not going to prison? I think the stakes are a little bit higher. So why don't we take that training to that next level? So again, handguns are great. We'll talk about ammunition pertaining to over-penetration here in a few minutes. So stay tuned because we're going to talk about the differences between the types of ammunition within the calibers, the pistol caliber, the rifle caliber, and the shotgun caliber, and then we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each of those. But again, the pros of a handgun, it's very mobile, it's very maneuverable, for grabbing doors, grabbing kiddos, but the training is quite steep. Okay, so let's talk about the number one gun that is recommended by gun store ninjas, gun store experts, that sell it, is the 12 gauge shotgun. So I'm not going to get into the difference between 20 gauge and 410. Okay, what we're going to be talking about is typically your 12 gauge shotgun. So what I have here is a Benelli M4. So this is a semi-automatic shotgun. It is a gas and inertia driven shotgun. It's primarily gas with a inertia driven backup. So the two major varieties that we have on the market right now are pump action, which is manually operated, and then your semi-automatic, which could be a combination of gas or inertia driven. And this is a gas driven shotgun. I'm not going to go into the intricacies of the difference between gas and inertia driven. There's pros and cons between a semi-automatic shotgun and a pump action shotgun or manual operated. But we're not going to get into that. We're just going to talk about the pros and cons of a 12 gauge. Again, the number one gun store expert recommendation. So I'm going to tell you the pros of this. The firepower of a 12 gauge shotgun is honestly second to none. When people ask me the magic bullet, the golden bullet, the man stopper rounds. It is typically a 12 gauge 1 ounce slug. Understand that from a caliber standpoint, you have your 9mm, which is like 3.57 caliber. You have your 5.56 or your AR-15, which is 2.23 caliber. Then you have like a 50 cal, which is a half an inch in diameter. This is 72 caliber. 12 gauge is 0.72 of an inch in diameter. So you with a 12 gauge slug, you typically have a 1 ounce piece of slug, 1 ounce piece of lead slug traveling at 9mm speeds. So the firepower is immense. And then your buckshot, typically the round that's recommended for personal protection is a double-aught buck. So a 0.00 buck. So the great part about the double-aught buck is it does send out typically 32 or 38 caliber lead round balls, typically at 9mm speeds. But the biggest con that they see is when people look at shotguns, they go, well, and the big thing is, well, you're going to get a massive amount of spread and you don't have to aim a shotgun. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I'll tell you why. And this comes from experience and training. It doesn't come from what I read on YouTube. It's what I've actually have dealt with in my law enforcement career. So what I'm going to talk about is, so for an average 12 gauge shotgun, so a 18 inch, that's the minimum barrel requirement before we get into tax stamps and stuff like that. An 18 inch Remington 870 with no choke for standard ammunition, standard 12 gauge ammunition, is only 1 inch of spread per 3 feet. So 1 inch of spread at 1 yard. So measure the distance of your longest hallway. People think that you send out a shotgun round and it just goes out into this large swath of bees. Nothing can be further from the truth. Now, do some shotgun ammunition, now not all 12 gauge shotgun ammunition is created equal. I'll give you a real world example where it really opened my eyes was the fact that I went to the AZ Post, which is the Arizona Peace Officer Standards and Training firearms instructor school. Now our agency, so I brought this exact shotgun to the course. Now our agency does not use lethal shotguns. They use less lethal. Thanks, Kevin, for joining me. They use less lethal. So when I got sent to the firearms instructor school with lethal ammunition from my 12 gauge lethal ammunition, it was all the seized ammunition. So this ammunition could have been used by gang members. They could have been used by criminals, or we taken it off, suspects. It was all the seized ammunition that was going to be destroyed that they handed me. So I got like gobs of different types of ammunition, like Winchester and Remington and Federal. All the honestly the crap. They don't typically bad guys don't buy the good stuff. They buy the crap. It was surprising that even with this shotgun has a choke in it. It actually has a modified choke in it. So it keeps the pattern tight, because as professionals, we want to keep that pattern tight so that it extends the distance of our shot so that we don't have to go to a slug. But you'd be surprised that I went to the course and we started patterning our shotguns. And I was the only shotgun that actually had a choke in its barrel. Everybody else was shooting just standard like 870s and stuff like that. I was shooting the Rolls Royce and I caught a heck load of shit for it. But you'd be surprised, some of my groupings, my patterns from the shots that I was actually shooting, the cheap stuff, was actually larger than than being shot out of a cheaper shotgun. Then the one agency that in our state that is actually using live shotguns, lethal shotguns, that I think is the only one left. They started shooting Federal premium flight control shot. I said, hey, can I, and I started seeing their patterns and they're really, really tight. And I said, you know what, if it's that tight in your Remington 870, I'd like to see it through my choke. And this is how professionals develop education and knowledge. I had a chance to learn something. I said, hey, can I grab a couple of your rounds and shoot those rounds through my shotgun? And you'd be surprised at 25 yards. At 25 yards, the average. So think about it. If you have an inch of spread per 1 yard, it should be approximately 25 inches or about 2 feet. You'd be surprised that this flight control out of that, my Benelli M4, was half that. So approximately that big. Look at that. At 25 yards, I can still have all of my pellets on paper and on target at 25 yards. So again, does that take training? Does that take experience? Does that take knowledge? Absolutely. So back to the shotgun. So the cons of again, could I give the average person a 12 gauge shotgun and can they shoot it? Yes. Now, understand from a perspective of the shotgun, it is the most limited capacity weapon system that we typically have of the three major weapon systems: pistols, carbines, and shotguns. It's the most limited. Now, this shotgun here can load 6 rounds into the tube, a ghost load 1 on the tray, and then have 1 in the chamber. So I can actually have 8 rounds in the shotgun with a side saddle of 6 shells. So I can have upwards of half the ammunition capacity of my rifle and just a little under my pistol. But again, understand the perspective of the recoil on this is quite immense. The muzzle flash on this, the big question I ask people is, have you ever shot your shotgun in darkness? And they go, no. Wait till you see the muzzle flash, and if you can get to a place where you can actually shoot it in the darkness, wait till you see the muzzle flash. It's going to be immense, okay? So you have to understand what your ammunition does. You have to understand what your shotgun does. And the biggest thing I go is when people ask me, like, well, the adaptability of the shot. So I can go from a buckshot to a slug, and I can have the interchangeability of ammunition. That's great, but can you do that on the fly? Can you, if a target presents itself at 50 yards, there is no opportunity that I could ever shoot a target at 50 yards with any kind of buckshot or any kind of shot. And people are like, well, when would you ever take a 50-yard shot for home defense? Well, okay, let's leave your world of I live in an urban environment and go to a rancher or go to a person on a horse property, say in Arizona, say I have 5 acres or 3 acres, even 2 acres, even 1 acre. How far is it the farthest shot in your 1 acre lot? Now, are you going to be able to engage that with buckshot? No, probably not. You're going to have to go to a slug. Can you do that on the fly with the perspective, whatever weapon system you have, whether it's a manual action, pump action, or a semi-automatic here? If you don't know how to do that and you're carrying the gun, then training should happen so that you can keep that at an unconscious competence level. That's where you have to be if that threat arises. So again, when would I ever have threat to myself at 50 yards? Well, what if it's your kid? What if it's your wife? What if it's, your neighbor? Again, we could go through all this all the time. But again, the great part about the shotgun, if you can run it, it's a successful weapon system. Instructor Karen, it's not her flavor. So whenever there's a shotgun class, and it's the smallest classes that we teach, typically I teach it because this is my world that I live in. But again, the firepower is immense. And we'll talk about ammunition here in a few. If you stay tuned, we'll talk about the ammunition here in a minute. Okay, so let's talk about the scary black rifle. Okay, so your AR-15. Now, a lot of people call this a rifle. We're not going to get into the elementary argument of carbine versus rifle. Some people call this a carbine. Some people call this a rifle. Now, from the true military designation and the true definition of carbine, this is exactly what meets the definition of a carbine. It's short, okay, so it's a short variety of a longer battle rifle, and it's typically a smaller caliber. So it fits the definition. So the original carbines were designed for the cavalry, i.e. to be shot on horseback. So they didn't want to have this long, typically a 30-inch, back then, a bolt-action rifle, shooting a bolt-action rifle from horseback, or even a lever-action rifle that was longer on a horse. So they shortened down the overall length of the guns, shortened barrels, and then what they did was they started realizing, you know what, maybe these horseback guys can't shoot full house rifle rounds, so we're going to shorten we're going to make a new cartridge that they can successfully shoot from horseback. So then the whole iteration, again, the AR-15 is based on the original AR-15, which was originally a 20-inch barrel with a fixed stock, and then it became the M16, and then then it became the M4 carbine, and then subsequently the AR-15 started adapting the AR. The civilian model started taking on the shape of the M4 carbine and started getting shorter and shorter. And this would be very similar to like a Mark 18. This is very similar to the military designation of a Mark 18, 10.3-inch barrel, collapsible stock. So, number one vilified gun, I think, on the market right now. When people ask me, Josh, what is the best home defense gun that I can get? It's truly going to be the AR-15. And I'm going to get a ton of flack for it. And I don't know how many times people go, wait, you mean to tell me that scary black rifle is the best home defense gun? It's going to go through wall after wall after wall after wall. Now, we'll talk about the myth there that it is not a 30-06, it's not a 308 rifle. Now, if I had a 308 rifle or even an AK-47, which is a 7.62 by 39, 30 caliber rounds, totally different. You're looking at those rounds are upwards of 3 to 4 times heavier than the round that I'm actually shooting out of here. 223, 5.56, okay? 223 or a 5.56, okay? Understand this, it shoots a very light, high velocity round, lightweight, and we'll talk about weight here in a minute. I can put 30 rounds into this gun for a standard capacity. No, 30 rounds is not a high capacity magazine. It's a standard capacity magazine, okay? Common sense gun laws, okay? I can put an optic on it, like this 8-point Comp M5. I can have a lighting system on it. I can have a sling, and I can just really accessorize it out. But really where it shines is in training. And you'd be surprised. Like, I get, again, 90% of my clientele get trained on the pistol. They come to training with the pistol. And then typically I bring this exact rifle out, and the shock and horror that I get when they see the gun, they're like, oh my gosh, that's one of those, they don't say it all the time, one of those death machines. And I tell them, like, listen, let's just shoot a couple rounds. Let's shoot 3 rounds, and then you be the judge of it. And every time they shoot those 3 rounds, every time they're so surprised about the lack of recoil or kick to this gun. There's, now there's a muzzle blast to it, and then using the right ammunition, you can control the muzzle flash, but they're surprised at how soft the gun shoots. Then what I typically do is I have them shoot at 25 yards, a standard, silhouette target at 25 yards with 5 rounds out of their handgun, whatever the handgun they brought to training, out of their handgun to do a grouping. And then I have them shoot 5 rounds out of the AR-15 with 0 training, just minimal training of this is how you put it up against your shoulder. This is how you put it up against your cheek. See the red dot, hold a little high due to height over bore at 25 yards and then shoot. And they start shooting groupings, and they're like, and then I bring the target back, and they're shocked at how tight the group is from this versus this. And I spent the better part of an hour trying to train them to shoot this accurately at 7 yards, and with very little instruction. Now, they spent the better part of an hour doing fundamentals of marksmanship with this, which can translate into this, but very little training on this. And I had them shooting very, very tight groups. So you can shoot very tight groups. Now, the number one thing that I get is I can engage targets out from point blank distances out to 600 yards with this rifle very accurately. And a lot of people say, well, you have the shorter barrel, you can't accurately shoot it. Nothing can be further from the truth. And that just comes back to training. And if people that have the mindset is I can only shoot 300 yards with a short barreled rifle, then guess what? You can only shoot 300 yards because what again, as Henry Ford said it the best, those who say they can't, and so those who say they can, they're both right. Okay, so let's talk about ammunition. If you guys have any questions, I want to keep this in open forum as much as possible. I don't want to just be talking at you. We've been at this for 30 minutes. You guys have been awesome. A couple of you have been staying with me. I absolutely love it. But if you have questions, comments, or concerns, please comment below and we'll ask them and answer them, and we'll do the best we can. And hell, if any of you have an answer, please tell me. I don't want to have all the answers here. So we're going to talk about ammunition here. So the first thing when we talk about like handgun ammunition, the three, kind of the two basic ones. Now I have a third one here. Is your full metal jacket or your non-expanding ammunition. Okay, so this is a solid lead bullet. Okay, solid lead bullet with a small jacket of copper around it. So when it hits targets, it goes straight through the target and it does not expand until it hits something very, very hard and it deforms because lead is quite soft. Okay. Then you have your frangible round, which is typically like a compressed copper round. This will not deform as it goes through flesh. There's been a lot of posts around the internet that frangible ammunition is not lethal. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you shoot somebody with frangible ammunition, it is just as lethal as full metal jacket. But understand, it will not deform. It will not. So when it hits something hard like steel or wood, it'll actually powderize and turn to powder. Okay. Your next type of ammunition, which is what we recommend as professionals for carrying in your firearms, is your hollow point or your jacket to hollow point. They call it a jacket hollow point because it does have a copper jacket around it. It's a lead core. Okay. The best way of explaining it, and I had Mike Mills, who's an awesome police officer, colleague of mine, and also fire instructor. He owns his own Instagram. The best way of explaining this is the full metal jacket is a ice pick. It goes straight through a target, while this is a hammer, and it disperses that energy. So full metal jacket is great for range, great for range work. Now there's some possibilities of carrying it, but there's limited applications of carrying it. Now, may I carry if I have a certain mission skill set where I have to shoot through different barriers and stuff like that? Could a full metal jacket where I have magazines that are specifically marked with full metal jacket possibly come in? Yes, but it's very, very specific when you're carrying it. I do not recommend carrying full metal jacket, while your hollow point or your expanding ammunition is what you want to carry, with the exception of carrying in New Jersey. Do not carry hollow point ammunition in New Jersey. It is illegal. Again, the whole common sense gun laws. Silliness. Anyways, I'm not getting my political soapbox. I'm very pro Second Amendment. Even as a law enforcement officer, I'm very pro Second Amendment. This is a 115 grain full metal jacket round. This is a 100 grain frangible round, and this is a 124 grain hollow point ammunition. So I'm going to explain what grains are, because I don't know how many people get this wrong, especially fire instructors. They don't know how to explain it. So a grain, when it pertains to a unit of measure for weight, is equivalent to 1 grain of barley. It is an old empirical system that you actually used for weighing. So you could actually, it's essentially standardized unit of measure. So for example, 115 grains is equivalent to 115 grains of barley. Because it used to be a commodity for beer and yeast and all of that other stuff. 100 grains is a 100 grain round is equivalent to the weight of 100 grains of barley. Your 223, this is a 64 grain 223 round. The bullet weight, just the weight of the bullet, not the whole cartridge. This bullet, the projectile, is equivalent to 64 grains of barley. Okay, so this typically is, so for example, like this 124 plus P round out of like a Glock 17 is traveling around 1,300, 1,400, upwards of 1,500 feet per second. Okay, so your 124 grain traveling at approximately 1,500 feet per second, maybe a little less. Okay, depending on the day. So 124 grains, so 9mm round. Okay, understand that 9mm round, because it's so heavy, when it gets shot out of a gun into, say, medium, such as an assailant, and through a wall, this round will go through more. This 9mm handgun round will go through more walls than this 223, 5.56, 64 grain round. And now this is built by both the same company, Spear. Okay, and I'm telling you right now, I don't know how many times people get triggered about this comment. Understand, yes, this rifle round, out of like, say, my short barreled rifle, my AR-15, is traveling upwards of like 2,900 feet per second. So upwards of almost a little over about twice as fast as this 9mm handgun round. But understand, this is half the weight of this handgun round. Understand that the heavier the round, when it gets met with medium or some type of stoppage, Things at rest tend to stay on rest. Think about this, and I'll give you a great example. How hard is it for you from a standstill, you put the car in neutral, to push a car? It's quite difficult, right? How easy is it for you to flick a pencil across the table? All you're using force, but you have to use less force to move a lighter object. The same thing applies. Again, things at rest tend to stay at rest. Things in motion tend to stay in motion. And that's really dependent upon mass. So the heavier the round, the harder it is to stop. So that's why, for example, you will see, law enforcement SWAT teams and the military leaving the MP5. That's the big thing of the leaving of MP5 subguns and submachine guns that typically shot a pistol caliber to your 5.56 or 2.23 rifle caliber. Because of the over-penetrated value, it would go, again, they've realized the handgun round will go through more walls than this carbine rifle round. Then also, so for example, the ballistic drop of a 9mm at 50 yards for 115 grain at shot out of a Glock 17 at 50 yards is 9 inches. At 100 yards, it's 14 inches. There's little to no ballistic drop at 25 yards. Actually, I'm going to be shooting low at 25 yards because the bullet is still going up to my sight line. And at 50 yards, because I have a 50-yard zero, in theory, I have a 50-yard zero. If everything's great, it's going to be point of aim, point of impact. Okay? And then the maximum deviation at the height, about 110 yards, I'm only going to be an inch and a half high. And then in theory, at 200 yards, in theory, again, in a perfect world, I'm going to be point of aim, point of impact. So it's my minimal shift from the point blank to 200 is 2.5 inches deviation, 2.5 inches. And I just told you that at 50 yards, a 9mm is going to be 9 inches low, and at 100 yards, it's going to be 14 inches. Sorry, it's going to be 14 inches low. So again, I have to gauge that, and I have to aim higher. So, and then again, this will go through more walls than this round. Okay. Now, are all rounds, for example, in our 223 round created equal? Absolutely not. This one right here is an M855. So the M855, this is a 62 grain full metal jacket with a steel penetrator. Okay. This is a non-expanding round. Okay. As we know, it does not. This is the ice pick. This goes straight through things. Okay. Then we go down from that, like an M193. This is a 55 grain full metal jacket round, does not have a steel penetrator, to a 64 grain Spear Gold Dot, which actually has a soft tip. You can actually see the silver part on the point. So what that does is that exposed lead tip hits something hard, and then it actually mushrooms, kind of similar to your hollow point. Okay. So again, this expands. The other thing is when this hits anything hard, to include bodies, as it cavitates through a fluid body, because the majority of our body is made up with water, it actually cavitates and it starts to pitch and yaw. And as the round starts to pitch and yaw, just like a football, as we spiral a football, the spiraled football can go a long distance, but the end over end football can only travel so far. As the round starts to pitch and yaw, the projectile starts to pitch and yaw, it actually loses velocity quite rapidly. And then as it loses velocity, it loses the kinetic energy to go through barriers. Okay, so once it hits that barrier, it starts to pitch and yaw, deform, and break up. Okay, so again, that's why I prefer the 223 5.56 in a home defense. But again, don't buy the M855 round. You have to buy a quality self-defense round. Okay, now let's talk about 12 gauge. Okay, the most over-penetrative of all three. Okay, even with a good quality 12 gauge double-aught buck, this will go through a massive amount of walls. Because again, just like as I said, each shot of this is 9 38 caliber lead ball rounds. What else is 38 caliber? 9mm. So again, when I press the trigger on a 12 gauge shotgun that's shooting double-aught buck, 9 38 caliber buckshots going out, and understand that it only, again, like as I said before, it's only 1 inch at 1 yard of spread. So I'm shooting 9 pellets straight at the target, and the over-penetration value is immense. Now I shoot a 1 ounce slug, a slug round, that is 1 ounce piece of lead, 1 ounce. Think about 1 ounce. That means if I hold 16 of those, which is approximately how many I can hold in this shotgun, a 1 ounce, essentially 1 pound of lead I can carry in there. 1 ounce piece of lead traveling at approximately a 9mm speed, 1,500 feet per second. Think about the stopping value of that. Yes, that will go through wall after wall after wall and exit your house. Because I'm in Arizona, houses aren't made of brick. Most houses are made of chicken wire, 2x4s, and some clay, commonly referred to as stucco. So they will go through a massive amounts. You have to understand the pros and cons of every gun that you're going to put in your home and potentially carry. It's a very serious thing you have to understand. And how do you get to know that? I mean, again, the internet only has so much, and I wouldn't trust some firearms instructor that, Bubba, that's picking his belly button and teaching you firearms. Take it to the professionals that are teaching you from a real world experience. As I said before, I went to that AZ Post Firearms Instructor School, and I even learned. That's where I impart that knowledge upon you from a firsthand perspective. That's my goal. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, we're continually doing private lessons, one-on-one lessons, either Zoom. Hey, I bought this gun and I don't know how to take it apart. Hey, Instructor J, how do I take it apart? We've done Zoom lessons on how to take it apart and clean it. We're doing live fire now because the ranges are still open. We're doing live fire private lessons. Contact us for private lessons. We can set you up. We're doing a virtual concealed carry class. The links are below. The Arizona concealed carry class, it's 2 parts. You do the sign up and you do the knowledge transfer, which includes the videos and the PowerPoints. And then once we show it shows 100% completion on our end, then I will contact you and we'll do a Zoom meeting similar to this where we interact. Except you're not going to be on the comments. You're going to be in a video interacting. We're also doing a bleeding control course where we teach you how to use awesome objects like these and tourniquets and stuff like that. We're also Attack Med Solutions distributor for their tourniquets and all their stop the bleed stuff. So if you need bleeding control stuff, contact us. We're a local for our Fountain Hills people. We're local. We're here to help our communities. But if you need anything, reach out to us through Instagram, Facebook, email. Check out our website, www.gtctrain.org. Sign up for a class. It's super easy. We'd love to see you in one of our virtual classes so I can talk to you. And then we're going to be starting our live classes here soon, but we're still doing private instruction. If you need to learn how to shoot your gun, clean your gun, disassemble, all of that, that's what we're here for. If we don't have anything, please be safe. Try to do something positive for somebody. We're almost through this COVID-19 stuff. We're going to be judged on how we're doing today, and we're going to be judged later by how we're doing today. Again, as we always say, what are you doing today to prepare for tomorrow? Be safe. Have a great one.